530 BC. The banks of the Syr Darya River. Cyrus the Great, conqueror of half the known world, lies dying. An arrow through his thigh. Blood pooling in the sand. Around him, the wreckage of his army. Slaughtered by a nomadic queen whose name was Tomyris. She'd warned him, "Stay away from my lands." But Cyrus didn't listen. He'd conquered the Medes, defeated the Babylonians, freed the Jews, built an empire stretching from the Mediterranean to the Hindu Kush. After all, why would he fear a woman leading archers or horseback? Now he's bleeding out, watching his soldiers die. And Tomyris? She's searching for his body, not to bury it with honor, to desecrate it, to fill a wineskin with blood and shove his severed head inside. "I warned you," she'll say. "You wanted blood. Now drink your fill." This is how the greatest empire builder of the ancient world died. Not in his palace, not surrounded by luxury, but in the mud, killed by someone he'd underestimated. Here's what they don't teach you about the Persian Empire. This wasn't just another ancient kingdom. This was the first superpower. The first time in human history that one ruler controlled nearly half the world's population. At its peak, the Achaemenid Empire stretched from Egypt to India, from the Black Sea to the Arabian Peninsula. 50 million people, dozens of languages, hundreds of cultures, all united under one banner. And unlike every empire that came before it, Persia didn't rule through terror alone. Cyrus created something revolutionary. A system where conquered peoples kept their religions, kept their laws, kept their local rulers. As long as they paid taxes and didn't rebel, they could live as they always had. The Greeks called them barbarians, wrote plays depicting them as effeminate despots. Hollywood turned them into CGI monsters. But the historical reality? Persia was more advanced, more tolerant, and more sophisticated than any Greek city-state. While Athens was experimenting with democracy for 30,000 male citizens, Persia was governing 50 million people from dozens of ethnic groups, with roads, postal systems, standardized currency, legal codes that applied across continents. They gave the world Zoroastrianism, one of history's first monotheistic religions, a faith that influenced Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They built gardens so magnificent the Greeks thought they were paradise, literally. The word paradise comes from the Persian paradisa, meaning walled garden. But empires built on conquest are fragile. Cyrus knew it. That's why he died trying to secure his northern border. And when the system finally failed, it took just one man, Alexander of Macedon, 13 years, never lost a single battle. And the greatest empire the world had ever seen collapsed like a house of cards. I'm the ancientologist, and I spend my time uncovering the parts of history they don't teach in school. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because what you're about to hear isn't Greek propaganda. It's not Hollywood fantasy. It's the real story of how a nomadic people from the Iranian plateau created an empire that defined what it meant to be a superpower. How they ruled with a combination of tolerance and violence. And how, despite everything they achieved, they couldn't escape the fundamental truth of empire, that nothing lasts forever. Let's start with who the Persians actually were, because before they ruled the world, they were nobody. Pastoral nomads, horse people, moving up and down mountain slopes with the seasons, summers in highland valleys, winters in the lower foothills, where the grass was better. They called themselves Ariana, a name that still echoes in the word Iran. The word Pars, which became Persia, meant warrior in their language. These weren't farmers building cities. They were riders, fighters, living simply, eating modestly, focused entirely on horses and warfare. They wore trousers, which shocked the Mesopotamians, pointed hats called tiaras. They were taller than the people of the Fertile Crescent, lighter in complexion, speaking an Indo-Iranian language completely different from anything in the region. In the 7th century BC, they captured the Elamite city of Anshan. From then on, every Persian king would begin his titles with King of Anshan. But they weren't independent. They were vassals, subject to the Median Empire, paying tribute, providing soldiers, taking orders. Then came Cyrus II, later called Cyrus the Great, born around 600 BC. And from the moment he took power, everything changed, because Cyrus understood something fundamental, that empires built on fear are brittle, that if you want to hold conquered territory, you need something more than swords. In 550 BC, he rebelled against the Median king Astyages. On paper, he should have lost. The Medes had a larger army, more resources, established power, but several powerful Median clans, fed up with Astyages' rule, defected to Cyrus. With their support, he crushed the Median army. And instead of executing Astyages, he forgave him, made him an advisor, treated the Medes as equals to the Persians. This became Cyrus's signature move: conquer with overwhelming force, then rule with unexpected mercy. He swept across the Iranian plateau, Parthia, Armenia, Cappadocia. Some regions submitted without a fight, because word spread. Submit to Cyrus, and you'll keep your position. Resist, and you'll be destroyed. By 547 BC, he controlled everything from the Caspian Sea to the borders of Lydia. That's when he faced Croesus, king of Lydia, rich beyond measure. The phrase rich as Croesus comes from this man. According to Herodotus, Croesus consulted the oracle at Delphi. The oracle said, "If you attack Persia, you will destroy a great empire." Croesus thought that meant he'd win. He was wrong. The oracle meant his own empire. Cyrus defeated him, captured Sardis, conquered all of Anatolia. And again, mercy. Cyrus spared Croesus, made him an advisor. By 539 BC, Cyrus stood at the gates of Babylon, the greatest city in the world. The gates opened, without a fight, because Babylonian nobles, disgusted with their king Nabonidus, welcomed Cyrus in. And what did Cyrus do? He freed the Jews, paid for the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem, restored Babylonian temples, honored Marduk, presented himself not as a conqueror, but as Marduk's chosen king. This is why the Bible praises Cyrus, why Jewish tradition remembers him with reverence. 2. The system. Building an empire. After Cyrus died, his son Cambyses took power. Immediately, revolts erupted. Egypt, Babylon, Lydia. Cambyses crushed them, then invaded Egypt, captured Memphis, took the pharaoh prisoner. But Cambyses lacked his father's touch. He killed the sacred Apis bull, insulted Egyptian religion, made enemies everywhere. When he died suddenly, possibly murdered, the empire teetered on collapse. Then came Darius I, not a son of Cyrus, not direct royal blood. He claimed descent from a distant ancestor to legitimize his rule. And he spent his first years putting down rebellions across the empire. But once he consolidated power, Darius proved to be the greatest administrator in ancient history, because he understood that conquest is easy, governance is hard, and Persia had grown too large to rule like a tribal kingdom. It needed structure, systems, bureaucracy. Darius divided the empire into provinces called satrapies, each governed by a satrap, a mini-king chosen from local nobility. The satrap collected taxes, maintained roads, oversaw justice, managed infrastructure. But crucially, he didn't control the military. That stayed under direct royal command, so no satrap could rebel effectively. To connect this vast empire, Darius built roads. The royal road ran from Sardis to Susa, over 2,500 kilometers, with relay stations every 25 kilometers. Messages could travel from one end of the empire to the other in a week, a journey that took ordinary travelers 3 months. He created a postal system. Riders would gallop from station to station, hand off messages, keep going, day and night. This inspired the famous motto later used by the U.S. Postal Service: "Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers." Darius standardized currency, the gold darik. 1 darik equaled 20 silver siglos. A Persian soldier's monthly pay was 1 darik. A sheep cost 3 siglos. This economic integration was revolutionary. Traders could do business from Egypt to India using the same currency, the same legal framework, the same roads. It was the first true globalized economy. Darius also built Persepolis, not as a capital in the traditional sense, as a ceremonial center, a showcase. The Apadana, the great audience hall, could hold 10,000 people. Its columns reached 20 meters high. Reliefs showed delegates from every corner of the empire: Egyptians, Greeks, Indians, Ethiopians, all bringing gifts, all bowing before the King of Kings. And that title matters: Shahanshah, King of Kings. Because Darius didn't claim to replace local rulers, he claimed to rule over them. The satrap of Egypt was still a king, but Darius was king of all kings, the supreme authority. This system worked for 2 centuries. Because Persia understood something Rome never quite grasped: that diverse empires can't be ruled through cultural assimilation. You don't make Egyptians into Persians. You let them be Egyptian and take their taxes. Now let's talk about what the Persians actually believed. They're often called fire worshippers, which isn't quite right. They didn't worship fire. Fire was sacred, a symbol of purity, of Ahura Mazda, their supreme god. Their religion was an early form of Zoroastrianism, called Mazdaism, not quite monotheistic. They acknowledged other gods existed, but Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, stood above all others, God of gods, just as the Persian king was king of kings. Zoroastrianism introduced concepts that would reshape world religion: dualism, the cosmic struggle between good and evil. Ahura Mazda represented truth, light, order. Ahriman represented lies, darkness, chaos. And humans had to choose. Every action, every word, every thought aligned you with one or the other. This was different from other ancient religions. In Babylon, Egypt, Greece, the gods were capricious. They fought among themselves, played with human lives. But Zoroastrianism said the universe itself was a battleground, and your choices mattered, not just for your fate, for the fate of existence. Zoroastrianism also introduced the idea of heaven and hell, of judgment after death, of a final resurrection where the righteous would be rewarded and the wicked punished. These concepts would profoundly influence Judaism during the Babylonian exile, and through Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The Persians had an unusual tradition for decision-making. Important matters would be debated twice, once while drunk, once while sober. Why? Because they believed alcohol revealed truth. A drunk person couldn't lie effectively. So if an idea seemed good while drunk and still seemed good while sober, it was approved. But here's what's crucial. The Persians never forced their religion on conquered peoples. Cyrus honored Marduk in Babylon. Darius restored Egyptian temples. Greeks worshipped Zeus. Jews worshipped Yahweh. Because religious tolerance wasn't just morally right, It was strategically smart. Persians made up maybe 5% of the empire's population. They couldn't rule through cultural domination. They needed cooperation. And the easiest way to get cooperation? Let people keep their gods, their temples, their priests. Just make sure they paid taxes and didn't rebel. This tolerance made Persia shockingly diverse. Babylonian scholars, Egyptian engineers, Greek mercenaries, Jewish financiers, all working together, all contributing to an empire that valued skill over ethnicity, competence over bloodline. In 490 BC, Darius sent an expedition to punish Athens for supporting the Ionian revolt. The Persian army landed at Marathon, outnumbered the Greeks more than 2-1, but they were caught in a bad position. The Greeks held the high ground. The Persians hesitated. Then the Persian commander tried to outmaneuver them. He began loading troops back onto ships, planning to sail around and strike undefended Athens. The Greek general Miltiades saw his chance, ordered a sudden charge. The Persians, caught disorganized, broke, fled to their ships, lost 6,000 men. The Greeks, 192 casualties. 10 years later, Xerxes tried again, with a massive army. Estimates range from 100,000 to 200,000 soldiers. He marched overland, met the Greeks at Thermopylae, that narrow pass where 300 Spartans supposedly held off the Persian horde. Except it wasn't just 300 Spartans. Several thousand Greeks from other city-states were there too. And they held for only 2 days before most withdrew. The Spartans stayed, along with about 700 Thespians and 400 Thebans. Maybe 1,400 men total. They were surrounded, annihilated. But the Persians had lost precious time. When they reached Athens, it was abandoned. The Greek fleet had sailed to Salamis, and there, in the narrow straits, the Persian navy was destroyed. A third of their ships sunk or captured, their supply lines cut. Xerxes retreated, left part of his army behind. It was defeated at Plataea the next year, and Persia never seriously threatened mainland Greece again. Not because they couldn't raise the armies, but because Greece wasn't worth the cost. It was poor, divided, difficult terrain, more trouble than it was worth. So Persia pivoted. Instead of military conquest, they used gold, bribed politicians, funded friendly factions, turned Greek city-states against each other, and it worked. For a century, Persia dominated Greek politics, through money, not swords. By the 4th century BC, Persia looked invincible, still the largest empire on earth, still wealthy beyond measure, but it was rotting from within. Succession disputes, weak kings, powerful satraps acting like independent rulers, rebellions in Egypt, in Babylonia, in Anatolia. Then came Philip of Macedon. He unified Greece, built a revolutionary army, the Macedonian phalanx. Then, in 336 BC, he was assassinated, stabbed by his own bodyguard. Power passed to his son, Alexander, 20 years old, untested. The Greek city-states rebelled immediately, thought this boy couldn't hold his father's empire. They were wrong. Alexander crushed them, leveled Thebes, made it clear. The young lion had claws. Then he crossed into Asia, 334 BC, with 40,000 men, against an empire of 50 million, and he never lost. Not once. At the Granicus River, he crushed the Persian forces. At Issus, he faced Darius III. The Persian king fled. His army collapsed. At Gaugamela, Darius tried again, this time with everything. Alexander was outnumbered 5-1. Didn't matter. He struck at Darius's position. Darius fled again. This time, he never stopped running. Persian satraps surrendered, opened their treasuries, welcomed Alexander, as the new king of kings, Persepolis fell. Alexander initially declared he'd preserve it. Then during a drunken celebration, it burned. By 330 BC, Darius was dead, murdered by his own satraps. Alexander took the throne, married Persian princesses, adopted Persian customs, tried to fuse Greek and Persian culture, but he couldn't hold it together. In 323 BC, at age 32, Alexander died in Babylon. His empire fractured immediately. His generals carved it up. The Seleucids took most of Persia, Greek rulers, Greek culture. Persia was conquered, but not dead. The language survived. The culture survived. In 247 BC, the Parthians swept in, built a new empire, fought Rome to a standstill. Later came the Sassanids, a conscious revival of Achaemenid glory, until the Arabs came in the 7th century AD. But even then, Persian language survived. Persian culture influenced Islamic civilization. The heart of the Islamic Golden Age. Persia. Poets, mathematicians, astronomers, all Persian. What do you think? Was Persia the greatest empire of the ancient world? Or just another conquering power with better PR? Drop your theory in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.